Hi everyone, it's Simon, and just like last year, I thought I'd give you a little recap of my travels and answer some questions. So let's go. My travel year started off with flying to Georgia a few days after New Year's Eve. However, I filmed just one video here, as the main reason for the visit was mostly just a position for a cheap flight to Japan. I had a great time traveling around Japan on my JR Rail Pass, and I still have a few videos left to release. From Japan, I continued on to Vietnam, where I stopped for 3 days, just to relax a bit, before continuing down to Australia. But I did manage to both visit Sydney and Melbourne, and film 4 videos for you guys. And this brings me to the first question. How would I rate the Australian rail system? Well, Australia is pretty good at commuter and suburban trains, but as soon as we venture into longer distances, such as intercity services or even really long distance service, it quickly falls apart. So I guess that lands it at an average score. Some good stuff, some pretty bad stuff as well. And after being away for about 4 weeks, it was time to head back to Denmark. In February, I took a quick trip over to Sweden, where I was mainly on the hunt for a refurbished X2000 train, but I didn't have luck. Instead, I managed to find some cool videos on the Arlanda Express, Tågab, and of course this bad boy that overshot the platform. Not forgetting this just bad train. In early March, I abused an Interrail pass in Central Europe, traveling on a MAV Eurocity, Westbahn Stadler Kiss, SBB Pendolino, SBB Giruno, Trenitalia ETR 700, DB Skoda Push-Pull, ICE 1, 2 and 3, as well as the new Nightjet, Old Railjet and a Deutsche Bahn IC2. In late March, I was off to Morocco, which brings me to my worst travel experience of the year. While the country is extremely beautiful, everywhere I walked there was constantly people coming up and trying to scam me, which left me not wanting to return. I did, however, manage to film 3 videos on the railway, which ranged from pretty terrible to world class. After returning from Morocco in April, it was time to travel again, first with a little trip to the United Kingdom in early May. Here I caught one of the best trains in the United Kingdom. And after that, I caught what I'm giving the worst train of the year award, the GWR Class 802. Hands down the most uncomfortable I've been on any new train in a while. Truly awful in every way, from the seat having collapsed completely onto the metal frame, clinically bright lighting, and awful ride quality. I got to try a much newer version on Avanti later in the year, and I will say those are definitely a big improvement. Towards the end of May, I went on a much more fun trip. Starting with the night train from Prague to Chop in Ukraine, where I had a lovely time traveling around the western part for a week. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to record any trip reports there, as while it's not illegal to take pictures of passenger trains, staff would often ask you not to record, and I just didn't want to cause any trouble. After Ukraine, I flew to the Caucasus, specifically Armenia, where I didn't really succeed in filming anything, as the Lake 7 train ended up running a weekend after I left, and the night train to Georgia was cancelled due to extensive damage to the railways in northern Armenia due to a big storm. But as we cross into the month of June, I continued the trip up to Georgia, where I recorded these 2 videos. On my way back from Georgia, I stopped off in the Czech Republic again, where I caught the train I'm giving the Best Train of the Year award, because I didn't really travel on that many exciting trains, but the new Czech Comfort Jet, they're just smooth, quiet, comfortable and very well designed. I really enjoyed filming that video, but yeah, it's not flashy or anything, it's just very solid train. And after getting back home from that trip, I actually went back to the Czech Republic again, mostly for personal reasons, just a few weeks later in July. In August, I first went up to Helsinki to film a video about the special commuter train that no longer exists. And you guys, of course, had a lot of questions about Finland. Best train for sure in Finland is the SR2 hauling some double-decker sleeper carriages. And if I can build any new railway line between 2 cities, I think I'd choose Helsinki and Turku, because the current line via the coast is such a big detour and it would have been really helpful when I was living there. Later in August, I also did a trip to Hungary and Slovakia, but the videos I planned to film there didn't really work out. In September, I was gonna ride Italy's very special retro night train, but they cancelled the train. so instead I had to travel on 3 variations of Italy's popular Pendolino trains. October was busy. First, I did my adventure on buses around Denmark, and then the day after, I flew to Poland to catch the train to Vilnius, followed by one of the biggest surprises of the year, the refurbished Soviet carriages on LTG Link. I also did a trip on the electric double-deckers, before heading up to Latvia to try out the new Skoda trains there, and then flying back to Denmark. And finally, towards the end of October, for my birthday, I did a little trip around Central and Eastern Europe to pick up some trains I've wanted to cover on the channel for a while. Once in Bratislava, as November started, I flew to Scotland, where I got cocked by ScotRail in my attempt to film a video on the HST, but I did film another 2 videos as well, before flying back to Denmark. And for my final trip of the year in December, I actually went back once again to the United Kingdom, mostly to meet with some of my fellow trip report creators, but also finally to get a ScotRail HST. And this brings me to this question about good things about United Kingdom's railways. I have to say frequency and coverage. Most lines have an actual usable service, and a good chunk of the country is connected by rail. Obviously, there's still some big gaps, but overall, it's not that bad. And while my travels for the year were over, I still got some questions left to answer from you guys. Starting out with the second part of the question from AB Trains. I don't really have any plans to go to New Zealand at the moment. It looks like a lovely country, but most of the trains just seems like some tourist bullshit that I'm not really that interested in. If I was to get an all expenses paid trip to anywhere in the world, I'd be off to Chile and Argentina first. It just seems like such a pretty place and lovely people there, and it's quite overlooked in terms of like places people travel to, and it seems really pretty also. So I'm really hoping I can make it there this year, but it's definitely high on the list of places I want to go to. Best train in the Balkans? Well, I'm gonna cheat a little maybe. Slovenia I'd say, because they're investing a lot into new trains, and they pretty much only have new trains now, and they are upgrading the infrastructure, introducing new services. It seems like to be the most functional of the Balkans. Have I thought about doing something like the Deutschland Ticket Challenge? Well, I've thought about it answering this question, but no, it's not something I plan to do, so don't expect a video like that. Have I filmed a video about this VDL Citera bus? I'm gonna be honest with you, I am not a bus guy at all, so unless you saw one in my Crossing Denmark by bus video, then probably not. And then I get this question about how I afford to travel. Well, like most people, I have a job, and in Denmark you get paid to study, which I just finished, I just graduated. And then the YouTube channel also makes some money, so I have a few income sources to afford all this travel. Am I going to try the new ICE service from Paris to Berlin? Simply put, no. Paris is my least favorite place on earth, so I'm only ever gonna go back there if I really have to do something there. Am I planning to travel on Irish Rail? Yeah, it's something I'd like to go back to at some point. I have done the Enterprise before and the Dart around Dublin, but I would like to do some of the other long distance stuff and make a few videos about it. It's not a super high priority, but it will probably happen at some point. Next year, I'm mostly looking forward to catching the ME locomotive in service in Hungary, the Israeli IC3 trains in Romania, but probably the train I'm most eager to try is the new Talgo coaches for DSB here in Denmark. Talgo in general is quite shite, so I hope these ones will be alright. I have my doubts, but I'm gonna try to go into it with an open mind when they enter service and see what they're like. Am I planning to do more videos about urban buses, such as the long ones in Prague or Bratislava? No, I have to admit, I'm not actually that big of a bus guy. The only reason I really did the one in Aalborg is because it was something quite big, public transport oriented, happening in Denmark, which I kinda like to cover, but don't expect it like in the rest of Europe. Do I plan to do more videos like the one crossing Denmark by bus? I will say not really. I have 2 ideas, one here in Denmark and another one abroad I would like to do, but they're both quite expensive, so maybe they will happen quite soon if the bus video gets even more views, but I wouldn't expect anything like that soon. Which country do I think has the most underrated railway? Well, that's a bit of an interesting question, because what makes a railway good and what do you value in a railway? I definitely was quite impressed by Lithuania this year. They seem to both invest a lot into their trains now. Obviously they're part of Rail Baltica, but also their whole domestic fleet is pretty much getting renewed, and they are upgrading most of their railway lines, so that's great to see. Am I planning to do a New York to Los Angeles sleeper train? No, first of all that doesn't exist, so you'd have to change somewhere, and I'm not planning on going to the US at the moment. How did my passion for trains start? Well, I like to give credit to my dad here. He had a big model railway and took me to the model railway club when I was young, and I think I just kind of growed a liking for trains there. Pineapple on pizza? I will say yes. I won't order it, but if I'm offered a slice, I will say yes. And for the final question of the year, top 3 countries for trains. Well, it depends what you value in a railway. I have an obvious top 2, which would be Switzerland and Japan in whatever order. Third place I would say is a bit more tricky because it's going to depend a lot on what you put emphasis on, like what you value in the railway. Is it coverage? Is it speed, like high-speed trains? Pricing, reliability? Well, lots of factors. I feel like the third place you could consider places like China or Korea and Asia, but also maybe somewhere like Czech Republic that has really good coverage and high quality of trains. Also perhaps the Netherlands, which have really frequent trains, or maybe Austria. So I'll let you pick your third one on your own. And I think that was all the questions this year, so I'm sorry if I missed yours, but apart from that, I would just like to say thank you for the support on this channel this year. It's been amazing. The channel has been steadily growing and I'm able to do more and more videos for you guys, which I'm really enjoying. So from my humble dorm here in Copenhagen, I'm just gonna say see you in the new year and hope you have a great New Year's Eve. Bye bye.